What if the thing keeping you stuck isn't your life? What if it's the way you're looking at it? Welcome back to Unquiet You. Today we're going to talk about something that quietly controls almost every area of our lives, and that's your perspective. Not the bank account or your relationship status, not even your past or future or current circumstances. It's the perspective that you have inside of all of those. Because perspective determines what you focus on, what you believe is possible, what you believe is impossible, how you interpret challenges, and how long you stay stuck in a situation. It also determines how much joy you experience inside the life that you're living. Your perspective actually creates your reality. And a lot of times when we talk about this, people will say something upsets them, or, they're in a situation where they can't see a certain outcome that they desire. And a lot of times it's true. Pain does feel real. Loss is real. Disappointment is real. All of these things are real and they do happen to us. But the way we change our perspective and how we look at things actually affects the after. So when we have pain, it's how do we respond after? It's when we have a loss, how do we respond after? When someone disappoints us or there's a disappointment in our life, what do we do after? How do we change our perspective after that? I think a lot of times we get stuck and people will stay in this cycle of a negative perspective. They can only see the negative. They can only see how it hurts them and how it's not working for them. When if we can change our perspective to what is, what's possible, what could be, this is something I work with my clients a lot on, is that it's shifting that perspective of this isn't possible to what could it be if it was possible? What could be possible in this situation? And I think it's why you see people have you'll see two people going down very similar paths, but one will have a very different outcome. It's because they have a very different perspective. They chose to see things differently, and they chose to take action from that versus falling into the negative trap of what's not working right now. My youngest daughter is homeschooled, and she goes to a tutorial. So she goes to a school where they have teachers for certain classes. And this last year, she had to take Spanish too. And it was a new teacher. The teacher was harder and put a lot of work on them, gave them a lot to do. And the first few weeks, she would come home and she was like, her grades were really bad. And she's not one to get bad grades normally. And so she just got in this spiral of, I'm going to fail this class. The teacher doesn't like me. Then her and her friends and their friend group started talking about it, and they were all failing, and it was just horrible and horrible. And every time she'd come home, she would say, pull me out of the class, pull me out of the class. And I kept saying, are you talking to the teacher? Have you looked at, maybe you need to learn to study different. Learning Spanish is different than English, and all the different approaches, but she could not get it out of her head that she had already failed the class. The teacher didn't like her, and there was nothing she could do about it. So she kept asking if she could quit the class, and I kept saying no. And she had some friends whose parents decided to pull them. And, she came to me and she said, everyone's leaving. And I said, but you're not. And I'm like, until you can change your perspective and take a different approach, you're going to keep getting the same results. So she drafted an email. I gave her some suggestions. She drafted an email, sent it to her teacher and to the school director. Within moments, had a response. It was completely a communication issue from the teacher's standpoint and from my daughter's standpoint. They got it corrected. And not only did she help herself, but she helped everyone that was still in the class, because it was as simple as something the teacher didn't realize something wasn't being done, and she needed to do something differently. And my daughter realized it wasn't a personal attack on her. So within 3 or 4 weeks, her grade all of a sudden moved back up to a B. She started coming home excited. And by the end of the school year, she will tell you that Spanish 2 was her favorite class that she ever took. And what I was trying to get her to see is that it wasn't the circumstance that was the issue. It was how she was seeing it, because that's where her actions were coming from. When she decided to switch her perspective to what could be, let's look for a solution. Let's look in a direction we haven't looked before, versus this is a negative hole, poor me, everyone's after me, it's never going to work. Everything shifted. It wasn't that she all of a sudden figured out how to take Spanish 2 and be good at it. It was that when she was sitting in class, her energy changed. She was listening a little bit more. She was paying more attention. She wasn't thinking that the teacher didn't like her the whole class. She wasn't thinking about how bad her grade was going to be. She was acing quizzes. She was getting things right. And she was getting her homework done 10 times faster because she wasn't dreading it, having the thought, well, I'm already going to fail it, so it doesn't matter. When we can change our perspective, we always will change the outcome no matter what. And so what I see people do a lot of times is we just get so stuck on focusing on the negative and focusing on what could go wrong that we forget that there's always another side to it, that we could focus on what could go right. I always tell people, your focus goes where your energy flows. And when we have a different perspective, we have better energy, and therefore we attract more of that energy, and our results will always be better. So I think this is a great time of year, because as we're moving into the summer, our schedules are shifting as moms. Even if you're not a mom, your schedules are shifting because of vacations, or people at your job are taking vacations. So you might be working a little bit more, and projects are just shifting. And, I know as a mom, when school gets out, our brains go to entertaining. And, a lot of times I used to dread school getting out, not because I didn't like my kids, but because I knew my schedule was going to get completely out of whack. I knew I was going to have to be on way more for them. My days were going to look different. And I kind of started dreading it. And I would get up in the morning and I'd be like, great, here we go again. And then by the end of the day, I would feel like I got nothing accomplished. And when I started shifting my perspective to how can them being home during the summer or doing breaks in general be a great thing, how can we utilize our time? How can we enjoy our time? I realized that being present will always shift your perspective. So the more present I could be with them in that moment, or the more present I could be with myself, even if that meant saying, you guys are going to have to entertain yourself, I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z, and being present with myself in that moment, being present will always shift your mindset and shift your results. Also, I think the more you can see problems as situations that you just have to find answers to, now all of a sudden you're seeing opportunities. We're not seeing things as a problem, because problem automatically shifts our brain into negative response, versus opportunities can shift our brain into being open, allowing more in, and seeing fixes that we would not have normally seen. Had my daughter not shifted her perspective on Spanish, she would have failed Spanish and had to retake it. And so it was her shifting that where she opened up the opportunities that she did have to learn how to study a little bit different than what she's used to. And she was able to enjoy and embrace the opportunities of being in an actual class with a teacher who was teaching in front of her instead of dreading it. So I think that when we can also shift our perspectives, our endings don't become endings. They become redirections. They become available for us to say, okay, if this is ending, where could this open another door? Where could this be a redirection for me, versus poor me, this is ending. Just as a mom thinking about summer, it's like, oh, great, school gets out, poor me, right? Like my daily schedule has ended and now I'm stuck in this kind of dread. And I don't think moms in general dread summer by any means, but it can be very overwhelming, and it is hard to juggle. Now you have a kid's schedule. Now you have to make sure the kids are covered. And if they're little, you have someone to watch them when you need to work and stuff like that. But I think if you can shift from the belief of everything is working against me or poor me or why is this happening to me, two, shifting to a perspective of how could this benefit me? What could be going right? And what are the opportunities waiting for me here? I think as parents, we will also instill that into our kids, and you'll see your kids grow in a different light, but also you'll realize that everything you desire is actually right in front of you. It just needed to have a little bit of a shift. So this comes up a lot, especially this time of year with my clients as we move into this new season or this summer season. And so I thought it would just be a really good topic to touch on and to just kind of ask yourself, where am I not shifting my perspective? Like, where do I need to go back in and see things as opportunities? Like, where can I see things as a positive versus a negative? Even if you're not going from a negative to a positive, maybe it's just a circumstance that's happened over and over and you're getting the same results. It's more of like, how can I shift this circumstance to a different thought, a different perspective about it, see it differently, and then you'll always end up with a different result. So I ask you, as you're moving into this chapter of the season of life this year, to check in and see where you need to shift your perspective. See where you need to look at more opportunities instead of things becoming an issue. Because I think our brain wants to go to, this is a problem, but it's actually not a problem. It's actually an opportunity for you to grow, for you to do something different, for you to redirect, for you to be more present, for you to show up. This is all an opportunity for growth, and this is an opportunity for you to shine as the version of yourself that you are. So have a great day. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening, for being a little louder, a little bolder, and a whole lot more you. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you subscribed, left a review, and sent it to someone you think might need it. As always, stay unquiet.